what you waited for. Waited all your life. Part of you has left the room. I can see it in your eyes. And don't it make you mad? Don't it make you mad?
Hey guys, welcome to Surf and Show. I'm Noel Salas, and today's surfboard review is on the Moonbeam. Now this is a Rob Machado design by Firewire surfboards, and I've got two stock 5.4 in the LFT construction. This one, it has FCS II plugs. This one has futures, and I ran a bunch of different fin configurations. We had some struggles, but in the end, I think we nailed it. This is going to be a super fun review, so sit back, get your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Now, as we dive into the attributes of this board, I must say the Moonbeam is pretty trick. It's got all these subtle nuances that give this board its own character. And a lot of the things that I see on this board when I first wrote it, it just kind of looks strange. There's a lot of cool vibe to it with, you know, what Rob does on the bottom and all that. But there's so much more to it that makes this board unique. And when I was surfing it and starting to look at the footage and doing some study on what makes this board tick, I really found some cool things about it. Let's start with the outline first, right? Looking at this board, 5.4, wider nose, small wave, right? Put a lot of foam up here so it paddles good. But what's different about this board is that its wide point is back from center. And what that's gonna do for me is it's gonna help the board pivot quickly. So I wanna get it up into the lip real quick, hit the section and small waves, and then get going again. As opposed to when the wide point's front from center, that's gonna actually draw your turns out a little bit. So I really like that about this board. I felt like it was quick and snappy. Now I want to look at the rail shape. We talked about it being a wider nose, and you can see it's round here, right? But it's straight from here to here. And this straight part right here is pretty much the engine in small waves. This helps us to get going real fast. The board has good glide. It has that speed, right? But then when we look from back here on the tail, you can see it's got curve here too. And that is going to maximize surface area, because that surface area and that wider tail creates resistance and it perpetuates and moves the board forward. Small wave boards have to be fast. As we move back into the tail, I mentioned good surface area. I also mentioned that there's curve in the rail here. Well, this curve in the outline is going to make for rounder turns. And in small waves, where the wave's real short, that turning radius to make it real round and tight and precise in the pocket, that's what it felt like, coupled with the half moon tail that Rob chose. Now, I've been trying to study a lot on half moon tails to find out exactly what to do, and there's not much out there. But this is closer to a swallowtail, right? It has 2 points. It has an extended rail line, so it's going to hold for a long period of time. And then each point is going to offer bite. And that bite is the control you're looking for. So what I really felt about this board is that I could get it going super fast. And then when it's time to stick that turn, I had the bite that I was looking for from the moontail. Now, continuing from the tail, I want to talk about the foil on this board. Rob really tapers it down really nice. Do you see how thinned out that is? Now, when it gets thinned out like that, I can really sink it fast and keep that performance feel to it. So off the bottom, I could sink it quick, coming into the pocket, doing a nice tight cutback. I just felt like it was ultra sensitive, and that's how I like it. And you don't usually get that on these really small boards. Now, as we're coming into the rail here, I like also, he's tapered it down here. And as I put my hand here, you can feel the apex of the rail is lower. And I really like that, especially on EPS boards, because they're more buoyant. Sometimes when the waves get bigger or you're going really fast, they kind of like real topical and they're hard to sink them. Now, because he did that apex low, I can sink the rail real fast, and that feels good too. And I wouldn't say it's a flat deck. I would just say it seems somewhat normal, but you can tell that the rail's tapered and it's moved lower. And as we come into the nose here, the foil's nice here too. It's tapered down. So all in all, I felt like the foil had good distribution and it was higher performance and sensitive. So let's look at rocker. As you can tell, it's pretty relaxed up here. That makes it glide. It gives it good paddling. But one thing is that it's not so relaxed that It could only handle small waves. We did test this board in its range, and there's some times where I'm surfing, the wave gets a little bit steep, and I really felt like this board handled it real well. Now, as we look at the tail curve here, I would say it's low to medium. And with that, I was still getting that good response off the bottom and in the pocket, and I was actually pretty surprised. Even in the 3 to 4, 5 foot range, this board held in real well. Now I want to talk about the bottom contours on this board, and this is where things get a little trick. This is also kind of like Rob's signature. He did the Go Fish with this bottom, the Midas. We're looking at the Moonbeam, and I'm thinking, okay, we can just kind of skip past it and say it's cool and it works, but I kind of want to know why. So Rob talks about basically being inspired by a guy by the name of George Greenough, who shaped boards and came up with this special design in the late 60s. Now, obviously the boards were a lot longer then, but there was some things about it and its functionality that made it faster, and it had better bite or control on the rails, even at high speed and choppy surf. So I can see why after studying George and what he did, why Rob was drawn to it. Now, obviously Rob's modernized it, and we're gonna look at the nuances to how this thing works. We're gonna talk a little bit about theory. Now, I'm not a shaper, and I'm gonna do my best to just try and make sense of what I think this board's doing and the way it felt under my feet. So I wanna start with George Greenough's theory on what he was shaping back in the late 60s. I'm gonna start with just lifting the board up here. I wanna talk about the hull of a board, H-U-L-L, right? And it's just, let's just say it was flat, right? And we're gonna talk about concaves first. Now, we know concaves is when we take a board that's flat and we put a single concave in here into maybe double concave or V out the tail. This is normal terminology for us, right? But what's cool about what George was doing is he would take the center of his board and he would put single concave down the middle here, right? And it would have this like shape to it. You can look it up online, and right here in the middle is where he wanted the board to hydroplane. What is that? It's when we get the air coming through the bottom of the board, it lifts the board up, and it makes the board skip or skim across the top, kind of like a speedboat, right? But on what was different is that he also had this lip that went around, that was kind of a raised edge that went around, all the way around the middle. So when it's hydroplaning, everything's working, but when he wants to turn the board, he would use that lip for bite, right? And then off that ledge onto the rail side, he used a displacement hole, which is basically V. Now that displacement hole is convex. So we talk about V in the tail, that would be the center point of the board being higher, and the V would come down here, and the shaper would shave it off this way. And what happens that if, like on a boat, that would make the water come off the sides, right? And as that comes off the side, the board or boat will sink down, and the faster you go, the more it kind of goes down in the water. So he also had that V on the rails. So when it wasn't hydroplaning on the centerpiece, the edges were easy to dig into, and the more speed he had, the more bite he could get, even in textured surface water. So now that we've talked about Greenough's concept, let's have a look at what Rob's doing on how he's modernized it and see if we can see some similarities and some differences. We'll start with the centerpiece here. Much like Greenough's, this centerpiece is going to be the flat part that runs all the way through to give it that lift. Now, if this is flat, Rob talks about this board having single concave. What gives it single concave is Rob talks about the two side panels, right? And if we put a ruler up as we run this down towards the back, these side panels are obviously raised higher on either side, creating this hydroplaning effect with a ton of single concave that runs all the way through the tail. And when it gets up like that and it's hydroplaning, it's moving more like a speedboat, and this board is extremely fast. So now that we've talked about the center, I want to talk about the side panels. And remember, let's talk Greenough had the lip that went all the way around the area in which he was using his concave planing hole, and then he was using that lip to give him bite in his turns and then he went into V on the rails, right? Now where I believe Rob's modernized that is this panel has a lip on it. And we'll get to that in a minute, but what's different about Rob's panels compared to the V or convex rail that Greenough was doing is that these have subtle concave in it. So Rob's, again, working on speed, right? But as it gets back here, it goes to flat, and then right in here, it's going to V. You see my ruler moving? It's starting to move. If we took Greenough's concept and Rob is doing the V back here, we always talk about V in the tail. That helps get this board to turn over, roll rail to rail quickly. Now I want to talk about how I believe the panels, because they're raised, gives this board hold like Greenough's concept or theory. So I'm going to turn the board over, and we're going to talk like we're going to go on a wave, right? So I'm going down, I'm going right, my front side, we're flying, I've got all the speed, now I want to hit a turn, right? And as I hit a turn and I get on my toe side like a bottom turn, this half of the board, depending on how hard my bottom turn is not touching the water. What's touching the water is this rail right here, and as I turn it like this, my finger right here is on the panel. Do you see my finger right there? This is now acting as V in the bottom, convex, that's giving me extra hold, right? I mentioned we have the rail, now we have the panel ledge, we have the Moonbeam point tail, we have the fin, so we have all these things giving us the traction that we need to get performance in the pocket, or if I'm going to do a really big roundhouse, it's giving me the hold that I'm looking for, and I generated all that speed. And I know that when I put the board on rail, it's going to hold that speed too. Now I want to talk about this construction Firewire calls LFT. Look, first, head over to their website. They do a great job breaking down their technologies, but I got this little cutout just so we could get a visual, right? EPS foam core, this is what they're calling a springer. When you look at this board, you see no stringer. Well, the springer is below the deck skin by that much. So that's the spine, everything's moving, twisting and turning around that, and that springer's giving it the flex and then making it pop back to its normal state quickly. And the board it's very alive underfoot, and I actually like the weight of the LFT because it feels most like a PU. And with its weight, it's still lighter, but the durability, the deck skin up top, the durability is second to nothing that I've ridden with the flex. Now, we talked about our scale of 1 to 10, 10 being no pressure dense at all on the deck here. I would say after 2 weeks of riding just this board, this is the one with the FCS II plugs, I would give this an 8.5 out of 10. The only pressure dents are right here for my front foot. Usually, I've got pressure dents all over on a regular PU. Now I want to talk about the fins I chose. We'll start with the FCS II plugs. Now, I started with a large fin like I always do because I'm always trying to maximize drive. I also started as a quad. Waves were 3 to 4 foot. It was pretty fun out there, a little peaky, and I had the large Kolohe side fins with the reactor upright quad rears because that's what seems to always work good for me. The board was really tight, speed was okay, and for it to be tight for a quad kind of threw me off mentally. So I thought, well, maybe it's best as a thruster, so I took the quad rears out, put the thruster in, and it worked a lot better. The board loosened up and it felt great. It had good speed. But as we continued to shoot video, I would notice that the board looked like it just had too much hold for me. I couldn't really get it to be playful, and I thought, that's interesting, let's switch to the performers because it's a little bit more upright. So I'm looking for it to pivot and turn faster, and I also went to the Neo Glass because the waves dropped and I wanted that flex to give me that pop in and out of turns, and it did, and it felt better with this fin compared to the Chloe and Dino fins. Now, I want to talk about what happened when the waves got a little bit bigger. They were really lined up. I'll use this left as an example, so when I'm talking, you're going to see it. I come off the bottom, I get one solid turn, the second turn solid, and as the wave gets steep, I go into the third turn, and the board bogs so hard, and then I get out of that and still get a decent turn off the top and go into 2 more maneuvers, and I thought, okay, I didn't move my feet. The first 2 turns felt good. The wave gets steep. Why did the board bog there? And after thinking about it, these side panels giving me the traction, I feel like this is how it felt under my feet. Because I'm using a large fin and it has a wide base and it's giving me more speed, so it's increasing lift, that when I hit that turn, I feel like the fin was not working in conjunction with the rail and the panel. What I felt like was happening was because I was getting traction from the rail here, that when I pushed down in that steep area, it caused it to bite right here. And when it bogged, that's when I lost my speed. So I was talking to Aaron about it. I'm like, I don't know why that happened. And the only thing I could think of was to go to a medium-sized fin. And it wasn't until after that I realized that I was getting enough speed from the concept and theory of the boardy board that Rob uses that I could use a smaller fin and get the board to settle down and really let it gain its own speed and use the fin more as like just for quick direction changes and some hold. That's when I figured out that this board was magical with a medium fin. So after we figured out the medium fins work best, I rode it with the Kolohe mediums. As a thruster, it felt great. And then I thought, shoot, you know what? I wonder how it would go with a quad set with mediums because of the problems I had when they were larges. So I took the only medium quad rears that I have that have some rake to them. As I chose the American template, I put these in with the Kolohes, and this board just came alive. And I'll tell you what was different about it. Since the medium fin has less depth in the water, it really made the board more playful, it made it looser, and then with the extra rake in this fin, I felt like it had more speed and traction in all the right places. Now on the Futures setup, I started with the Jack Freestone Large because I hadn't figured out that it worked best with the medium fin. And it worked pretty good. I got the pop, the speed. A lot of the footage that we have is me riding this board with a large thruster set. And like I said, it didn't feel bad. It just times I had that bog. But this is the fin I ran for the bulk of it. And then once we figured out that the medium fin was the ticket, I switched to the John Alpha fin. And this is going to feel a little bit more like a honeycomb. This felt great. I feel like I get the fins loose. I even rode it in some bigger surf, like that 3 to 5 foot zone with the medium fin. And I felt like it had enough hold. It had plenty of speed, and it actually just made the board playful, and it worked perfect in conjunction with the bottom contour design. So let's look at some waves together. Nice overhead wave, good bottom turn, top turn, throwing a lot of spray. The rail's really biting and digging in good. I love it. Look at the speed. Pretty effortless. Little floater here. Able to just set it up to this turn right there. That wave was fun. Now look, this is the Neoglass Performer size large. Look at the projection. Smaller wave, it's kind of crumbling. Good speed throughout the entire ride. Now this is the quad setup. I love it. It's solid fast off the bottom. Top turn's good. What I like is that with the quad, it had the speed and it kept the board real loose and playful. Now look at this right, board's just flying. Now it's a really good wave, but sometimes to hit a turn going this fast, it's hard to hold the rail. There it was right there with a sick rebound. That one felt really good. And then this last wave, taking off late, good bottom turn, sticking it off the top. You know, for a board that isn't supposed to surf bigger waves very good, I felt like it held really well and even able to stick the bottom turn with a good top turn right here. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's review on the Moonbeam. Special shout out thanks to Firewire and Rob Machado for sending these boards down for review. I had a blast. And Rob, I hope I did you justice by breaking down your board design. Look, if you like the show, subscribe. You can also find us at surfandshow.com and share the link with a friend. Help us expand our community. Until next time, see you in the water. Bye-bye.
Take care, but it takes so much time.